also known as prod. In this video, I want to show you how to create a custom mode line for Emacs. I will start with the basics, and then gradually we will build up a mode line that looks pretty and that includes some of the common patterns you will be using most probably when designing your own mode line. What I want you to pay attention to at first is what I have right here. Then I will show you how the default mode line looks, and then we will start piecing this together. Let me tour you around. The first thing to notice is that my mode line is very minimal in terms of color. The default mode line of the Modus themes, now I am using the Modus Vivendi tinted theme. The default mode line in terms of color and presentation looks like this, what you see right now. And also notice the space between windows here. This is my spacious padding mode. So by default, you get something like this, okay? With the addition of spacious padding, you have this. And then with a minor mode that I have as part of my custom Emacs configuration, as part of my dot files, we get this. I will toggle it again just for you to see. Here we have solid backgrounds and we have a box around the mode line by default. Of course, the manual of the Modus themes describes how to configure the mode line, but nevertheless, I have a minor mode here just to show the effect. And here it is. The next thing to consider is that my active window has more focus, more stuff than the other windows. Notice this window here, that it has the name of the buffer, the major mode that I am running, my not much indicator package, these are email counters, and the date and time. These other windows only include the buffer name, which is truncated to a maximum length, and the major mode. There is no further information. Same for this one over here. It is the name of the buffer and the major mode. When the buffer is read-only, there is a lock icon over there. And when the major mode is not a list, there is a different indicator than the lambda, the Greek letter over there. And as I move around, notice this, as I move around, the indicators are always on the focused buffer. Notice, by the way, also the information about the Git branch I am on. And when I hover over it, maybe the text is small to see it, but there is a pop-up and it shows the revision, meaning the Git commit. And there are some options for right click or left click, but I did these for completeness, for demo purposes. I don't really use them much. But they call some commands to show a diff. What matters now for the mode line is that because all the indicators and basically the expanded view will always be on the focused mode line, I don't really need this more intense style over here to figure out which is the active mode line, because the active mode line is the only mode line that is busy or busier. The others are very subtle, very minimal. This truncation, by the way, that you see over here, only comes into effect when the window is narrow. And narrow is defined by a function on what it means to be narrow, what the threshold is. So if I close this window over here, you will notice now that there is no further truncation, okay? And now we can see more clearly what I was telling you about, that the indicators will only appear on the focused mode line. Same, by the way, for the bold face, you see, of the buffer name relative to this one. We can see now that there is no bold face. Here there is the bold face. And let's now see how the default mode line looks. And then we will start piecing together a custom mode line. But first, let's see. So this is the default view. We get first a duplication of content. So my not much indicator package is echoed on all mode lines, which is already wasteful. It is already annoying. Same for the time. I get to see it everywhere. I find this distracting. We have these cryptic markers over here. Of course, I say cryptic, maybe this is a strong word. They are not indecipherable. You can hover over them and they will tell you what each of them does, what each of them signifies. Nevertheless, even if you read about them, even if you learn what each of them does, you will eventually forget. So I know that these asterisks indicate that the buffer has been modified. But I don't remember what the first asterisk means, what the second asterisk means. I'm also not sure what that colon sign is. I could probably make a guess, but really I don't remember. And I know that the final dash over here is if I am editing the file remotely or locally. So remotely would be through an SSH connection or something like that via a Trump method. But yeah, this to me seems cryptic still. Even though I am experienced, even though I have read about this, I know, I have an idea, still it feels overwhelming. Still it feels hard to remember. And I also get all this busy information here, like why do I need to know that LDoc is active here and here, like all the minor modes and a brev mode? Is it really something that is pressing need? Same for the line numbers and this sort of thing. Personally, in my mode line, I don't even show line numbers. I found them completely useless. But that's a matter of preference. But the point is that we get to see this. And I think this is wasteful. Let me show you again my mode line. And also, of course, the fact that indicators are pushed to the right-hand side, which I think spaces things out and makes it easier to focus on the information. Okay, so let's start writing something ourselves. We need to modify the variable mode line format over here. And here I have the default value. But let's start from scratch. And let's make something that is empty. Let's start with something that is empty like this. And let's read the documentation of mode line format before we do anything else. Control HV with point over the variable will ask us to describe the variable, and the default value is the mode line format. So if we type enter, we will be reading documentation about this. I don't want to read all this now. I want you to read it at your own pace. What matters is that when we are adding a variable here, like all the variables I am adding to this list, this variable has to have the property risky local variable. Otherwise, it won't be evaluated as part of the mode line. Furthermore, the mode line has some special constructs, namely the eval, which is a keyword, and the propertize a keyword. And the thing is that with those, you can have functions that are evaluated each time the mode line is updated. So you have basically dynamic blocks instead of just static text. It is important to have stuff inside of the eval, otherwise it will only be evaluated the first time you set the value of mode line format. And otherwise, the idea is that this is a list and you have basically variables that return a string value. There are some specifiers, format specifiers over here, such as, for example, the %e, which is print error message about full memory. And yeah, here is the %e. I will keep it. I have never seen this in action, so I'm just keeping it here for the sake of completeness. And then you can just read this at your own pace. But for now, let's start with a simple mode line like this. The thing to consider is that the mode line has to be set with the setQ default. Because the mode line, let's read again the documentation. The mode line, if we go towards the end of the documentation, it is telling us that this variable automatically becomes buffer local when set. So buffer local variables, those that are automatically buffer local, will default to a local value, meaning a value that is specific to the buffer, if we do something like this. For example, let me show you. I will have in this other window the prot mode line package, okay? And you see the indicators over there. By the way, it's not the prot mode line package, it's just a file that is part of my dot files. I haven't published this as a separate package. So I will do setQ here to the mode line format, and I will set its value to nil. Because this automatically becomes buffer local, setQ has the effect of setting the local value. Let's see it in practice. I did the nil, so what it did is it disabled the mode line, basically. And you will see that this only applies locally to that buffer. This other buffer over here, this other window over here, still has a mode line. So if I do now kill local variable, and I do the mode line format, and I do this, let's see what happened. Why didn't it work? Maybe I need to not quote. I was expecting this to work. Oh, so yeah, you should quote it, but for some reason it wasn't updated. So yeah, probably I should have done like this, kill local variable, and then force. Okay, it updated automatically, but otherwise you do force mode line update. So yes, no big deal. The point is that setQ does not work for what we want because it only applies to the buffer where the setQ is called. What we want to do in cases where the variable automatically becomes buffer local is to use setQ default, this keyword over here, and this will set the global value of the otherwise buffer local variable. This is exactly what we want. So if I do this now, we will see now that all the mode lines are affected. Let me also disable, by the way, the mode that makes the mode line subtle. So now we have the default colors of the modus vivendi tinted theme, the default style of the mode lines. Okay, so now I have two mode lines that are empty. They both have the default value. Let me add now just a string here, hello world. And let's see what happens with this. We see that there is a hello world over there printed on the mode line. Let me add a space and then hi, like this. And let's see what happens. There is a space and then hi. Okay, so you get the idea. Let's add now a call to eval, and no, actually let me do this so that you will get the idea. Let me do let's call a function, and this function will do format, and it will return as a string the value of buffer file name. Buffer file name, let's see what buffer file name is. It is a variable, and it is a variable with a buffer local value, and it is telling us the name of the current buffer. So what I want to do is to have to format a string that will say buffer, all caps, colon, space, and then the name of the current buffer. In this case, let's evaluate this here just to see what it does. It returns nil. Why would it be nil? Maybe if I call it as a function. Oh, Interesting. I was expecting there to be a name here. Okay, anyhow, it doesn't really matter. I want to evaluate this, and we will notice that this does not work. The reason this does not work is because it's twofold actually. The first is that this list is quoted with the back quote. And when a list is quoted with a back quote, or basically anything is quoted like this in Lisp, it is telling the Emacs, don't evaluate any of this. What follows the quote, take it as is, take it literally. So naturally, this list is taking format literally. It is not evaluating format. When we want to selectively evaluate elements inside of a list, we have to tell Emacs, you know what, I want you to evaluate this one, but not the whole list. So this is what I want you to do. And thus we give it the comma operator. And we have to replace the single quote with a back quote. And let's see now what happens if we do this. So this now will work. Let me add some more spaces here and let's evaluate this. But now what we have done is still wrong because the format buffer and the name of the buffer is recording the default the starting value here. So whatever value was the moment we did the setQ default here is the value that is staying there. Whereas let's try this in this buffer over here. This buffer over here will give me the buffer file. Okay, right now I understood why it returned nil. Sorry, I was checking for the file name of a buffer. And of course, this one is a scratch buffer, which is why we don't have anything. What we would want is the buffer name. Let's return it as this. It is a function. But let me show you now what the problem is. Exactly what I was saying. That here, when we do it like this, we are recording a value the moment we do setQ default, and this value remains in place. You will see that scratch for dot files is what is printed there, but also what is printed here, which is wrong. We would want to dynamically update this so that it matches the given value. And this is where the eval comes into play. The eval is this, like this. And let's make this single quote again. And let's see what happens now. Sorry, let's see. So we see now that in this buffer, we have prot_modeline.el. And in this other buffer, we have scratch for dot files. So now we understand what the eval does. It is telling Emacs, in every context, I want this part to be evaluated each time. Whereas the other parts, these here, are always fixed. So this is the idea. Let's see what we can make with this. Let's remove all this noise. And let's have this. And let me remove that. So now we just have buffer and the name of the buffer. What we can do here, let's add it like this so that you see what we can do, is the buffer name. Let's see what we have here. The buffer name is always returned as a string. And what we can do to a string is we can add a face to it. We can propertize the string. And the way you do this, the general form, is you do propertize and then the string here, and then you will give it all the properties you want. In this case, we want to give it a face. So I will say face, and then I will just use one of the many faces that are built into Emacs. I will use the error face, okay? I can learn more about faces with Emacs list faces display, and this will produce a list of lots of faces here, and I can pick one of those. I won't bother you with this. You can check these on your own time, or you can do Emacs find dash library and then search for faces, which is the built-in library that defines lots of basic faces. And you can do a search here for, let's do it, Emacs occur death face, one word, death face. And when you do that, it will, actually, let's do it like this, occur again, but let's do parenthesis, starting parenthesis, death face, so that we only get, you know, the definitions and not every occurrence. And you will see lots of things here, like highlight, region, shadow, lots of stuff, and then you can check, for example, the link. What is the link? Okay? And you will see that over there. Let's go back to the Scratch buffer. And now what we want to do is take this and do it for the buffer name, like this. Let's have it there so that you can see. So we want that. The way evaluation works in Emacs is that buffer name is evaluated, it returns a string, and then propertize operates on the string to give to it the face called error. And what we want now is all this to put it instead of this. Let's have it like this, and let's see what happens if I evaluate this. Very well. The face now is using the error face, which is red. Just like that. Let me change error to success, like this. And now I get a green or teal color over there, which indicates success. And let's do a warning just to confirm that. And we also get a warning just like that. Very good, very good. So let's start adding more stuff to this. We have an eval like this, and we can keep iterating on the mode line format over there. And we can add a second, for example, let's add some space here so that you can see. We can add a second eval like this, and I will say, I am writing this right now just for demo purpose. And here, instead of buffer name, I want to add the major mode. The major mode is returning a symbol this time. And what we need to do is we need to do intern soft over the symbol to turn it, oh, sorry, it's not intersoft, I confused it. It's symbol name over the symbol to turn it into a string. Because remember, we want to propertize the string of the major mode such that it returns the face. Such that it applies the face. So let's add here, we will add the bold weight. Let's do it like this. And now we see, I will add some space here for didactic purposes. So we see that what we have now is a buffer, and then yellow text for the name of the buffer, mode, and then bold text for the name of the mode. This is looking very promising. What we can do here, of course, is we can take it a step further. Apart from, let me have it like this, and let's have that here. Apart from just propertizing the string, we can also capitalize it, for example. I will have it here, capitalize, like this. And now we have, you see what it does now? It is capitalizing it. The problem, what I did here, is that it destroys the face that we pass to it. It destroys the properties. So for this to work, you must first capitalize. Let's go to propertize. You must first capitalize. So you must be here, and you want to have that, and then propertize. And now you see we have Lisp interaction mode, and all the first letters are uppercase. So this is very nice. This is looking very promising. Now, the problem when we start building a mode line like this is that we are adding too many eval calls, and this looks a bit messy. And we are also trying to format everything in one line, and you see what we are doing here. It becomes a very long line, and it is kind of ugly. What we can do then instead is, rather than have this here, let's copy it into a variable. Let's come here. I will delete this. We don't need it anymore. And I will do def var. Variables that are for the mode line are buffer local, just as the mode line. So def var is the keyword to declare a variable, and the def var local is the same to declare a local variable. So I will do now my mode line major mode, just like this. And the value of this variable is this eval, which is a list. Okay? So I am quoting everything here. I don't want any of this information to be evaluated the moment I define this. I want it to be taken as is and given and passed to the mode line format from where it will be evaluated and shown on the mode line. So this is what I want, and then I can provide the documentation string, which is mode line construct to display the major mode, just like that. And now I have defined my variable. Remember when we checked the documentation string of the mode line format, it was telling us that the variables must have a risky local variable property. And in my file, just to show this, I do this like this with a list. I collect all the variables and then I iterate over them, and I do this for all of them at once. But I want to do it just one by one here for you to see. We do put and then my mode line major mode in this case, and we will say put to this variable over here, to this symbol rather over here. You have to quote it. Put to this symbol the property called risky local variable, and the value of that property is non-nil. It is the letter T, which is the symbol for non-nil. So I am declaring it now as risky, but before I do it, I want to show you why this is important. So I have now the mode line, let's add it here, mode line major mode. So I am evaluating this. And notice now that the thing has disappeared. It has disappeared because the mode line variables must be declared as buffer, as risky local variables. So I will evaluate this now. And now I will go back here and evaluate this again. And you see now that it is displayed just fine. So if you don't have the risky local variable property, your variable will not work, even if it is otherwise correct. When we have variables like this, they are messy. They look ugly because you have a call to propertize, which calls capitalize. It gets very tricky. What you want to do in a case like this is define a helper function. Let's define one simple helper function, my mode line, and then a major mode name, just like this. And this function will not take any arguments, and all this function will do is it will do the work of capitalize, just like this. Capitalize and symbol name. Return capitalized major mode, just that, as a string. Okay, so our function does this, and then we want to go to propertize over here and simply call the function, and then otherwise do the thing. Let me remove this format now because now we don't really need it. And let me evaluate this and evaluate this as well. This is looking good. And now I will come here to my mode line and evaluate it for changes to take effect. And now I see that I get the bold face that I want, the capitalization that I want, and I also removed that format. And so then I can repeat the process for this one over here. And I will replace it with my mode line buffer name. Okay, we can safely delete this now. Let's have it like this. And we have that. Okay, this is how it would look. And let's do def var local. And we will have as a value this one. And it will be my mode line buffer name. Just like that. And we will provide the documentation string mode line construct to display the buffer name. Just like that over here, and we close the thing there. Remember that we absolutely need this. And as I said earlier, I am using a do list, which you can see over there. But in this case, I am doing it one by one for didactic purposes. And let's evaluate now again. And we see that this continues to work. Let me remove the whole format thing because we don't need it. And we see now that we get it to work just like that. And basically, this is the idea. Let's now define a face, because for whatever reason, I feel that warning or bold or so on, they don't really cut it. I don't like it. So I will define a face here. Notice that in my file, I define lots of faces, and the face can be elaborate like this one, okay? But I won't show you all this because it is out of scope. Let me show you one very simple face. My mode line red background, okay? Just like that. And without explaining too much about what this is, we wanted to have a background which is the red color and the foreground which is the white color. Just like this, and I will say mode line face, let's call it face with a red background for use on the mode line. Something like that. Okay, so I have this, and let me replace then my mode line buffer name with my mode line red background. Sorry, I meant the face of my mode line buffer name. And I am doing that. Very good. And did I evaluate this? Okay, so now I get a red background. Granted, it's not the prettiest thing to stare at, so let me change it to gray 50 or something so that it doesn't bother us too much. And maybe I can also inherit the bold face, and now it is bold as well, just like that. Maybe because it's hard to see now, maybe I can make it a bit darker, just like this. You get the idea though. Let me actually write a color here because it is distracting me a bit too much, and I prefer to have something like this. This should be okay. Okay, so we have like a color like that. It's a nice blue color over there, and basically we did our little thing. Now you may say, I notice here that I would need more space, the buffer name here. I would need to have more space so that it's not too tight in there. And what we can do here, instead of calling buffer name directly, we can have another helper function. My mode line buffer name, just like this. And this function again does not take an argument, it doesn't need to, and we will do something like this, just like that. We want to format it as a string, yeah, no worries, but with 2 spaces around it. Return buffer name with spaces around it, just like that. Simple yet super effective. Let's see the difference here. And we have that. Of course, I called this red background, but it's not. Let me call it just background or whatever. It doesn't really matter. And let's evaluate this now. And you see now that there are spaces over there. It looks very nice now, and we can work with that. Where I have the Lisp interaction mode, I would like to have a little symbol next to it, so that it's not just the name of the major mode, but there is also a little indicator next to it. What I can do here is, let me do it like this and you will see. I will just add a symbol here. I will switch to Greek and I will type lambda. Let's see what happens in this case. I have the major mode like this. And notice that because now I am giving it two strings, it is not doing the right thing. It would do the right thing if I were to have these as a list. So it would have to be a list like this. And let's see, does it work? You see, now it works. So if you want to have more than one string for the eval keyword, it has to be a list of strings. And now that I have a list of strings over here, I can add a space between them. Let's see. And that's nice and pretty. Because this is a string, I can propertize it as well. Let's propertize with the face. Again, I will use error here just so that you can see it. You see, it is red like that, and you get the idea. Let's switch it to, for example, the shadow face, which is more subtle like that. Okay, so this is how I do it on my end actually. So we have the shadow face and we have a list of strings that we are giving it now, the strings that are propertized. So this is starting to look really good. What I don't like right now with my mode line over here is that I get to see all the indicators on all windows. I don't want that. I only want to see the indicators, like the important ones, in the focused window. There is a function called mode line window selected P. This is the function. And of course, it will return true if the current window is the selected window. I think this function is available for Emacs 29 though. This is the problem. So if you are on older versions of Emacs, this will not work, unfortunately. But let me see if it is actually something you could easily copy. Let's have this a little bit. Yeah, this is something that you could most probably backport. I will put it here and I will put it in the show notes, but I will say Emacs 29, check the definition right below. Let's have it here, and sorry, we want this part to be a bit separate. Let's have it here. So we have this function. Let's kill that buffer. We have this function over here, okay? Assuming you are on Emacs 29, which is going to be released soon in the summer of 2023. And what we want now is we want to make our variables here evaluate this so that they only appear in the selected window. For example, the buffer name. I want, right where I have the properties over there, I want to have my function call over here, check if we are in the focused window, in the active window, and you see now, just like that, I am able to have less noise on the mode line and more useful information. This is the idea. Okay, you see, I have the blue here, I don't have it there. This is the idea, folks. And based on this, you can iterate on it and you can keep adding stuff until you reach the point where I am at. Let me now switch again to my mode line. Here, this is my mode line. And you can reach this point over here, and then I will just activate the minor mode I have as well. And of course, you can check my dot files. You can see how I am fleshing this out. It is, yeah, almost 600 lines, this file, and you can see how I am fleshing it out. Let me show you some more stuff that I have on this, for example. When you do narrowing, when you do narrowing like this, you will see a narrow indicator just like that. If you are recording a keyboard macro, you will also see a keyboard macro indicator over there. When you are editing a remote file with Trump, for example, let me do sudo like that, and let's try this. And let's see, when you are editing a remote file, you get another indicator over there. So there is this idea over here, and of course the truncation that I referred to, and yeah, this is the idea, folks. But yeah, it is doing a lot of things, so you can study this, you can see what the ideas are here, how these are implemented, and then you can go about doing your own thing. Like the major mode indicator, you see the lambda that I was doing earlier, there is a function that will check it will return like what, depending on the major mode, it will return something that I consider a useful symbol, or it's actually just text, okay? And it will propertize it using the shadow face. When it's the major mode, it will remove the mode and it will simply capitalize it, this sort of thing. And you will see there are more cases like this, and you can go about studying this and learning from it. So that's all for today, folks. Thank you very much for your attention. I will add these notes on my website in the publication that will embed this video on my website. If you are watching this on the video hosting platform, there will be a link to my publication about this. In that publication, I will also include a link to my dot files from where you can find my Emacs configuration, among lots of other things that substantiate my custom environment on GNU/Linux. That's all for now, folks. Thank you very much for your attention. Take care. Goodbye.